Sleep proved to be indeed the problem. For what seemed a great time, cramped and wearied, and soon hungry and thirsty as well, he sat still in the darkness, trying not to attend to the unflagging repetition of ransom, ransom, ransom. But presently he found himself listening to a conversation of which he knew he had not heard the beginning and realized he had slept. The lady seemed to be saying very little. Weston's voice was speaking gently and continuously. It was not talking about the fixed land, nor even about Meldill. It appeared to be telling, with extreme beauty and pathos, a number of stories, and at first Ransom could not perceive any connecting link between them. They were all about women, but women who had apparently lived at different periods of the world's history, and in quite different circumstances. From the lady's replies, it appeared that the stories contained much that she did not understand. But oddly enough, the unmanned did not mind. If the questions aroused by any one story proved at all difficult to answer, the speaker simply dropped that story and instantly began another. The heroines of the stories seemed all to have suffered a great deal. They had been oppressed by fathers, cast off by husbands, deserted by lovers. Their children had risen up against them, and society had driven them out. But the stories all ended, in a sense, happily, sometimes with honors and praises to a heroine, still living, more often with tardy acknowledgment and unavailing tears after her death. As the endless speech proceeded, the lady's questions grew always fewer, some meaning for the words death and sorrow, though what kind of meaning Ransom could not even guess, was apparently being created in her mind by mere repetition. At last it dawned upon him what all these stories were about. Each one of these women have stood forth alone and braved a terrible risk for her child, her lover, or her people. Each had been misunderstood, reviled, and persecuted, but each also magnificently vindicated by the event. The precise details were often not very easy to follow. Ransom had more than a suspicion that many of these noble pioneers had been what in ordinary terrestrial speech we call witches or perverts, but that was all in the background. What emerged from the stories was rather an image than an idea, the picture of the tall, slender form, unbowed though the world's weight rested upon its shoulders, stepping forth fearless and friendless into the dark to do for others what those others forbade it to do yet needed to have done. And all the time, as a sort of background to these goddess shapes, the speaker was building up a picture of the other sex. No word was directly spoken on the subject, but one felt them there is a huge, dim multitude of creatures pitifully childish and complacently arrogant, timid, meticulous, unoriginating, sluggish, and ox-like, rooted to the earth almost in their indolence, prepared to try nothing, to risk nothing, to make no exertion, and capable of being raised into full life only by the unthanked and rebellious virtue of their females. It was very well done. Ransom, who had little of the pride of sex, found himself for a few moments all but believing it. In the midst of this, the darkness was suddenly torn by a flash of lightning. A few seconds later came a revel of Perelandrian thunder, like the playing of a heavenly tambourine, and after that warm rain, Ransom did not much regard it. The flash had shown him the unmanned, sitting bolt upright, the lady raised on one elbow, The dragon lying awake at her head, a grove of trees beyond, a great waves against the horizon. He was thinking of what he had seen. He was wondering how the lady could see that face, those jaws monotonously moving, as if they were rather munching than talking, and not know the creature to be evil. He saw, of course, that this was unreasonable of him. He himself was doubtless an uncouth figure in her eyes. She could have no knowledge either about evil or about the normal appearance of terrestrial man to guide her. The expression on her face, revealed in the sudden light, was one that he had not seen there before. Her eyes were not fixed on the narrator as far as the event as that went. Her thoughts might have been 1,000 miles away. Her lips were shut and a little pursed. Her eyebrows were slightly raised. He had not yet seen her look so like a woman of our own race, and yet her expression was one he had not very often met on earth, except as he realized with a shock on the stage, like a tragedy queen, was the disgusting comparison that arose in his mind. Of course, it was a gross exaggeration. It was an insult for which he could not forgive himself. And yet, the tableau revealed by the lightning had photographed itself on his brain. Do what he would, he found it impossible not to think of that new look in her face. A very good tragedy queen, no doubt, the heroine of a very great tragedy, very nobly played by an actress who was a good woman in real life, by earthly standards, an expression to be praised, even to be revered. But remembering all that he had read in her countenance before, the unself-conscious radiance, the frolic sanctity, the depth of stillness that reminded him sometimes of infancy and sometimes of extreme old age, while the hard youth and valiancy of face and body denied both, he found this new expression horrifying. The fatal touch of invited grandeur, of enjoying pathos, the assumption, however slight, of a role seemed a hateful vulgarity. Perhaps she was doing no more. He had good hope that she was doing no more than responding in a purely imaginative fashion to this new art of story or poetry. But by God, she'd better not, and for the first time the thought, "This can't go on," formulated itself in his mind. "I will go where the leaves cover us from the rain," said her voice in the darkness. Ransom had hardly noticed that he was getting wet. In a world without clothes, it is less important. But he rose when he heard her move, and followed her as well as he could by ear. The unmanned seemed to be doing the same. They progressed in total darkness on a surface as variable as that of water. Every now and then there was another flash. One saw the lady walking erect, the unmanned slouching by her side, with weston shirt and shorts now sodden and clinging to it, and the dragon puffing and waddling behind. At last they came to a place where the carpet under their feet was dry, and there was a drumming noise of rain on firm leaves above their heads. They lay down again, and another time began the unman at once. There was a queen in our world who ruled over a little land. "Hush," said the lady, "let us listen to the rain."